The summer air over Normandy smelled like wet earth, burned fuel, and death. By July 1944, German tank crews believed they still owned the battlefield. Even after the Allied landings on June 6, many Panther commanders were convinced that once their armored divisions fully engaged, the invasion would slow to a crawl. The Panther tank had already earned a dangerous reputation. Its thick frontal armor and powerful 75 mm kg.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.
WK-42 gun could destroy most Allied tanks before they even came close enough to fight back. In village after village across Normandy, German crews watched American Shermans burn. British tankers feared open ground. Every narrow road between the hedgerows felt like a trap. And inside many Panther turrets, confidence slowly turned into arrogance. But hidden behind the thick Norman hedges, something was changing. On the afternoon of August 8, 1944, near the small village of Saint-Aignan-de-Cramesnil south of Cayenne, a single British Sherman Firefly waited silently in concealment. Its crew barely moved. Sweat rolled down their faces inside the cramped turret. Outside, dust drifted across the road as German armor approached. The British tank looked almost identical to every other Sherman destroyed across Normandy. To many German crews, it was just another weak Allied tank. But this Sherman carried something different. A long British 17-pounder anti-tank gun, a weapon capable of killing Panthers and even Tigers at long range. Within minutes, 5 Panthers would burn. And for many German tankers, the illusion of armored invincibility would begin to collapse forever. The road toward Falaise had become one of the most dangerous places in France. After weeks of brutal fighting around Cayenne, Allied commanders were desperate to break through German defensive lines before the enemy could regroup. Operation Totalize began during the night of August 7. British and Canadian forces pushed south under darkness, supported by bombers, artillery, and tanks. The fighting was violent and confusing. Smoke covered entire roads, bomb craters blocked movement, dead vehicles littered the fields. Yet despite heavy pressure, German armored units still believed they could stop the Allied advance through aggressive counterattacks. Among those German units was the powerful 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend and elements of the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler. Many of their crews were veterans. Others were young replacements hardened by weeks of non-stop combat. They trusted the Panther completely. From the outside, the tank looked terrifying. Sloped armor, wide tracks, high-velocity gun. In open combat, Panthers often destroyed Shermans before Allied crews could even identify the threat. German commanders repeatedly used this advantage to deadly effect throughout Normandy. But Normandy itself was becoming the real enemy. The hedgerows created a battlefield unlike anything most tank crews had experienced before. Thick earth embankments and tangled vegetation turned open countryside into a maze of narrow corridors. Visibility vanished. Long-range firepower became less useful. Ambushes happened constantly. Tanks suddenly appeared at dangerously close distances. Every field could hide anti-tank guns. Every intersection could become a killing zone. And British commanders were adapting faster than German crews realized. The Sherman Firefly was never meant to look impressive. Even many Allied tankers disliked it at first. The powerful 17-pounder gun was so large that modifications inside the turret made conditions miserable for the crew. Space became extremely tight. Ammunition storage was awkward. The long barrel was difficult to conceal. But British engineers understood something important. Standard Sherman guns struggled badly against Panthers from the front. The Firefly solved that problem. Now, for the first time in Normandy, British crews possessed a tank capable of striking back with deadly force. Among the men preparing for combat that August morning was Sergeant Gordon of the British 144th Regiment Royal Armoured Corps. His Firefly crew had already seen enough fighting to understand how quickly tanks died in Normandy. Crews rarely saw the enemy that killed them. A flash from a hedge, a single impact, then fire. Sometimes the first warning was molten metal spraying through the turret at terrifying speed. The Firefly crews learned patience. They learned not to rush forward like many inexperienced crews. They learned to stay hidden, wait for side shots, engage from concealment, fire once, move if possible, survive. Across the battlefield, German commanders prepared their own response. SS Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann, one of Germany's most famous tank aces, moved toward the front with elements of Schwer SS Panzer Abteilung 101. Wittmann's reputation had become legendary after Villers Bocage in June, where his Tiger tank caused massive destruction against British forces. German propaganda transformed him into a symbol of armored superiority. To many German crews, commanders like Wittmann represented proof that German armor still dominated the war. But by August 1944, the battlefield was changing faster than propaganda could keep up. Allied air power constantly attacked roads and supply lines. Fuel shortages worsened. Tank replacements became harder to deliver. Crews received less training. Experienced veterans disappeared faster every week. And most importantly, Allied crews were learning exactly how to kill German armor. South of Caen, the tension became unbearable. You can almost feel the heat trapped inside the steel hulls as engines rumbled across the Norman countryside. German Panthers advanced carefully along the road near Cramesnil. Dust rose behind the columns. Infantry struggled to keep pace. Tank commanders scanned through periscopes and binoculars, searching the hedgerows for movement. The crews understood danger existed everywhere. Yet many still believed their armor and firepower gave them the advantage. Hidden nearby, British Fireflies waited in silence. The crews barely spoke. Every sound inside the tank felt loud. Metal creaked softly around them. The gunner focused through his sight. The long 17-pounder already aimed toward the road. Distances had been measured carefully. Escape routes memorized. The plan depended entirely on surprise. Then the Germans entered the kill zone. At approximately 12:40 p.m., the stillness shattered. The first shot exploded from the hidden Firefly position with enormous force. Smoke blasted from the muzzle. The shell crossed the distance almost instantly and slammed into the side armor of the lead Panther. The impact ripped through steel. Flames erupted from the tank seconds later. Inside the German column, confusion spread immediately. The crews could not clearly identify where the shot came from. Hedgerows blocked visibility in every direction. Commanders screamed over radios. Turrets rotated desperately. Engines roared as drivers attempted to reposition. Before they could react properly, the second shot came. Another Panther erupted into flames. Now panic started spreading through the formation. German crews understood instantly that this was not artillery or infantry anti-tank fire. The impacts were too precise, too powerful. Somewhere nearby, an Allied tank destroyer or heavy gun had them trapped, but they still could not see it. The Firefly crew worked rapidly inside the turret. Loader, gunner, commander, every movement practiced countless times before battle. Another armor-piercing shell rammed into the breach. The gun fired again. A third Panther burned. The battlefield transformed into chaos within minutes. Smoke filled the narrow road. Burning fuel poured from shattered hulls. Some German crews attempted to reverse, others searched wildly for firing positions. infantry scattered into ditches and fields. Radio communication became frantic and confused, and still the hidden Firefly kept firing. The fourth Panther died trying to maneuver away from the road. The shell punched through side armor and detonated ammunition inside the hull. The explosion blew flames high into the air. Nearby German crews now faced a terrifying reality. Their superior tanks had become trap targets. The terrain that once protected them now limited movement completely. Long-range advantages meant nothing in the cramped hedgerow battlefield. Then came the fifth kill. Another accurate shot, another burst of fire and black smoke. Another Panther destroyed before its crew could effectively respond. 5 German tanks eliminated in minutes. The battlefield fell into stunned confusion. For German survivors, the psychological shock was enormous. Panther crews had entered Normandy believing Allied tanks were inferior. Many expected Shermans to avoid direct combat whenever possible. But now a single concealed Firefly had dismantled an armored formation with terrifying efficiency. And perhaps most disturbing of all, the British crew survived. The destruction near Saint-Aignan-de-Cramesnil became one of several moments during Normandy where German armored confidence suffered severe damage. The Firefly's success was not based purely on firepower. It reflected growing Allied tactical skill. British and Canadian crews increasingly used concealment, coordination, terrain, and discipline to counter German advantages. The old assumptions were dying. German tank superiority had once depended on a combination of technology, experienced crews, and tactical flexibility. Early in the war, these strengths overwhelmed many opponents. But by 1944, Germany faced enemies that adapted rapidly. Allied industry produced huge numbers of tanks, aircraft, trucks, and ammunition. Training improved. Communication improved. Combined arms coordination improved. Meanwhile, Germany slowly lost the ability to replace experienced men and equipment. The Panther itself remained dangerous. Many Allied crews still feared it deeply. Its gun could destroy Shermans from long range with devastating ease. But Panthers also suffered serious problems in Normandy. Mechanical failures remained common. The heavy tanks struggled in narrow terrain. Fuel shortages limited movement. Allied fighter bombers constantly threatened exposed columns during daylight. Most importantly, German crews no longer controlled the battlefield the way they once had. In the days after the ambush, burned Panthers remained beside Norman roads as grim reminders of the changing war. Blackened steel hulls sat twisted near hedgerows. Some still smelled of burned fuel and ammunition. Allied soldiers passing through the area often stopped briefly to examine the wrecks. Many understood exactly what those destroyed tanks represented. The myth of untouchable German armor was cracking, yet the battle for Normandy was far from over. Throughout August 1944, fighting intensified across northern France. Allied forces pushed relentlessly toward Falaise, while German units attempted desperate counterattacks and withdrawals. Entire villages changed hands repeatedly. Roads became jammed with destroyed vehicles, wounded soldiers, refugees, and retreating columns. Artillery thundered day and night across the countryside, and inside many German tanks, fear quietly replaced confidence. Tank warfare in Normandy had become brutally personal. Unlike massive open battles on the Eastern Front, combat in France often happened at shockingly close range. Crews hunted each other through orchards, villages, and hedgerow lanes. A gunner might only have seconds to identify a target before either firing or dying. Visibility changed constantly. One moment a road appeared empty. The next moment shells smashed through armor from hidden positions. The psychological pressure was crushing. British Firefly crews understood their own vulnerability perfectly well. Despite the powerful gun, the Firefly was still fundamentally a Sherman. German guns could destroy it easily if they spotted it first. Many Firefly crews became priority targets because German tankers learned to recognize the long barrel of the 17-pounder. Some British crews even painted parts of the barrel to disguise its length and appear more like standard Shermans. Every engagement became a deadly race of observation and reaction. For the men inside the Firefly near Saint-Aignan-de-Cramesnil, survival depended entirely on remaining hidden long enough to strike first. They succeeded not because German tanks were weak, but because battlefield conditions rewarded preparation, patience, and positioning more than raw armor thickness alone. That lesson spread rapidly across Normandy. As Allied forces continued advancing, German commanders increasingly faced impossible situations. Fuel shortages forced tanks to abandon movement. Air attacks destroyed reinforcements before they reached the front. Mechanical breakdowns left valuable Panthers stranded beside roads. Exhausted crews fought continuously with little rest. And everywhere, Allied artillery and armor pressure continued building. The Falaise pocket soon became a disaster for German forces. By mid-August, Allied armies moved to trap large portions of the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army near Falaise. Roads filled with retreating vehicles attempting escape eastward. Allied aircraft attacked relentlessly. Burning trucks and tanks lined the roads for miles. Soldiers abandoned equipment and fled through fields under constant bombardment. Some German armored units fought fiercely to keep escape routes open. Panthers and Tigers launched counterattacks against advancing Allied troops. In many places, the fighting became desperate and chaotic. But the strategic situation was collapsing, and the symbolism mattered deeply. Only weeks earlier, many German crews still believed Normandy could become another defensive victory. They trusted superior armor and tactical experience to eventually stop the Allies. But now those same armored units suffered catastrophic losses under constant pressure from air power, artillery, infantry, and increasingly effective Allied tanks. The Firefly ambush near Saint-Aignan-de-Cramesnil represented more than just 5 destroyed Panthers. It represented the moment when battlefield dominance truly began shifting away from Germany. For Allied crews, victories like these boosted morale enormously. Sherman crews who once feared Panthers now understood German tanks could be hunted successfully under the right conditions. Firefly units earned growing respect across the battlefield. British commanders integrated them carefully into armored formations, often assigning one Firefly for every troop of standard Shermans. Their role became critical. Spot the Panther first. Fire accurately. Kill before the enemy reacts. Simple in theory. Terrifying in reality. You can almost imagine the silence after the battle ended near that Norman road, smoke drifting slowly into the sky, metal ticking as destroyed tanks cooled, abandoned helmets scattered near burned vehicles. The terrible stillness that follows violence. Somewhere nearby, exhausted British tankers likely sat inside their Firefly trying to process what had just happened. 5 Panthers destroyed in minutes. Even experienced crews understood how rare such moments were. But while Allied soldiers celebrated tactical victories, the war itself continued grinding forward with brutal momentum. Thousands more would die before France was liberated. German armored divisions still fought hard despite mounting losses. Many Panther crews continued resisting fiercely all the way back toward Germany itself. Yet something fundamental had changed in Normandy during those summer battles. The fear was no longer one-sided. Earlier in the war, German armor often dictated combat terms. Enemy crews feared open engagement. German tank commanders attacked aggressively with confidence in superior training and equipment. But by late 1944, Allied armies increasingly seized the initiative. Numerical superiority, industrial strength, air dominance, and tactical adaptation slowly overwhelmed Germany's remaining advantages. The Panther remained a deadly machine until the end of the war. Many Allied tankers still considered it one of the most dangerous enemy vehicles they faced. But war is never decided by one weapon alone. Logistics matter, fuel matters, training matters, air support matters, crew survival matters, adaptation matters, and in Normandy, the Allies adapted faster. The Sherman Firefly itself became one of the clearest examples of that adaptation. Britain recognized a battlefield weakness and solved it under enormous wartime pressure. Engineers modified existing Shermans rather than waiting for entirely new designs. Crews learned specialized tactics. Commanders integrated Fireflies carefully within armored formations. The result changed tank combat across northwest Europe. German crews learned quickly to fear the long British gun. Panther commanders, who once ignored Shermans, now searched carefully for Fireflies hidden among them. Some German reports specifically warned crews about the danger posed by 17-pounder armed tanks. Encounters became increasingly cautious and deadly on both sides. But no amount of caution could fully remove the terror of Normandy's hedgerows. Even today, the countryside still holds traces of those battles. Quiet roads pass through fields where tanks once burned. Small villages rebuilt after terrible destruction now stand peaceful beneath open skies. Yet beneath that calm landscape lies the memory of armored warfare at its most intimate and violent. And among those memories remains the image of a single, concealed Firefly turning a road into a graveyard of panthers. The story survived because it captured something larger than one engagement. It revealed how quickly confidence can disappear in war. One moment, German crews believed they ruled Normandy. Minutes later, their strongest tanks burned helplessly beside the road. That transformation defined the final phase of the war in Western Europe. Again and again, German units fought with courage and tactical skill. Again and again, Allied pressure continued building until resistance collapsed under sheer weight and coordination. The battlefield advantages Germany once enjoyed became harder and harder to maintain, and every destroyed Panther in Normandy symbolized that slow collapse. As summer turned toward autumn in 1944, Allied armies pushed beyond France into Belgium and toward Germany itself. Burned-out armored wrecks remained scattered across former battlefields as silent monuments to the campaign. Many would eventually be scrapped, others simply rusted away beside roads and fields. But for the men who survived those battles, the memories never disappeared. The sound of shells striking armor, the smell of burned fuel, the fear inside narrow steel turrets, the split-second decisions between survival and death. And somewhere in those memories, one terrifying realization stayed with German tank crews forever. The Shermans were no longer easy prey, because hidden among them were Fireflies. And on one deadly afternoon near Saint-Aignan-de-Cramesnil, one Firefly proved that even the feared Panthers of Normandy could die in flames within minutes.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.